Want to try Sashiko? Copy mug mats are the perfect first project. I'm going to use these little templates and make some coffee mats. They're available everywhere now, and they just make it so easy to do these little Sashiko patterns on things. There are lots and lots of different designs. Now you can draw your own Sashiko, draw the grid, make the pattern on there and follow it. And it's nice to do that. It's relaxing and soothing, but it is quite time consuming. Or I don't enjoy drawing very much. So for me, these are just a great option. And I keep buying different ones and using them. These actually somebody lent me, so let's try these out. For this, I'm going to use these little, they're actually 6 inches square cotton fabric. I'm also going to use 3 different markers on these and see how that goes. The first one I'm going to try is this Clover. I have tried this before, it didn't work that great, so let's give it another shot here. I'm going to do this bird with it. Not too many lines here if it rubs out. I'm hoping this is going to work. This is the pen that I'm going to use. It does have this nice slim point. I could tape this template down, but I think it'll work if I just hold it. If I don't have any success with that, then I will go ahead and tape. Let's try drawing in these lines with this little marker and see how it goes. Alright, let me lift that up and have a look. It's a little bit faint, but I think it's okay. Now in these little curves here, it's a little bit more awkward to use. On these long lines, it seems like it works okay. I think the big question will be whether it rubs off before I get a chance to sew it all. These are a good size pattern to try this out though, because if it does rub off, it's not going to take me that long to just redraw this and start again. It's these little bits that are the most awkward with it not actually having a point, it's a slit. Let's lift that up and see what it looks like. No, I don't think that's going to work well. Well, I'll just take it off so that you can see. I don't think that's going to work well enough. It doesn't show up a lot, and I think it's just going to rub off before I start sewing it. So yeah, see the slightest little brushing and that's gone. So I really just need to abandon this as far as Sashiko goes. But it will work for other things, so I will use it for other kinds of sewing, but I'm not going to attempt again to draw Sashiko with it. I'm just going to reposition my little bird and just start again with a different marker. This has been my old favourite for the longest time. It's sew line and it's a ceramic point, and it has refills, and you can just press the button to make it come further down. I really have always liked this. I think this one is the yellow colour. I have a yellow under white because sometimes you need to be able to differentiate between lines of what you're doing. This is attempt number 2 on this one, and we're going to use this ceramic pencil. One of the things I like the best about this pencil is at the end of your project, you don't have to worry about getting rid of the marks. Just using the fabric makes them slowly wear away. But if it's a very complex pattern, that also means that you have to keep it handy so that if it looks like your pattern is fading, you can just touch up the line again before it disappears. I think it lasts quite well though. I don't think I'll have to touch the lines up again on this one before I sew it, but we'll see. Pretty quick and easy to do this. I think that there is a white one that I have, and I think it does show up a little bit clearer than this yellow. Let me see if I can carefully lift that without moving it out of position. Oh yeah. Okay, so that shows up much better. So I'll continue to use it often, which I do anyway, and I'll do some Sashiko on that, and then we'll show you that one later. So the next one is this, and I think this is a really pretty pattern. I've used a pattern before that does this part, but this adds in these circles, and it really enhances it. I like that a lot. I'm probably going to use this one again as well. For this one, I'll go ahead and use this iron off pen. Now I have used this before as well. This is quite a new pen that I've got. I've never been very happy with the white iron off pens before. They seem to have a lot of problems, but this one up to now I've found has worked well, and I've not had any problem ironing it off. So that's pretty centered, and we'll just start filling this in. One thing I don't like about the iron off pens in the white is when you first draw the line, you can't see it. So you may think you haven't drawn it and draw over there again, but it just takes a little bit for the white to show up. And I personally find that a little bit difficult. I like things that make Sashiko easier and more accessible for everybody. You'll notice as well that I draw on this cutting board. Some of these pens I press with quite hard, not this one, but some of them I do, and it would mark my table, and so I always out of habit put a cutting mat underneath, no matter what I'm actually drawing with. It also has the kind of a surface where if this was just on my wood, the fabric might slide around. It's not tacky in any way, but it's not quite a smooth surface, and it just helped my fabric to stay in place a little bit easier. Especially when, like now, I'm not taping it down or anything, I'm just holding it in place with my hand. If you're using white fabric, you could do a coloured iron off pen, heat erasable pen, and they actually work much better than the white. I'm not sure why the white has always been a problem. You should also bear in mind as well that some people think that the heat erasable pens, the markings may come back afterwards. And I think I've said before, I've not actually had a problem with that, but it's not really, doesn't really get icy cold where I live either. I'm in kind of a warm area of the country. If you feel like that might be a problem with you, for you, then this would really rule out that option. Although the Sashiko stitching does mostly cover the markings that you're making. I think it's the kind of thing where you're just going to have to try it out for yourself and see whether or not this is a suitable option for you. And if you're a quilter or do some other kind of sewing, you may have used heat erasable pens before and already know that. That might be it. Okay, so again, I'm going to carefully lift this and try and see. It looks like I've missed any obvious markings. I think that's going to look really pretty. I have another pattern here that I like, so I'm going to make another mat with this one. I'm just going to mark in these 4 dot corners for this because I think I can hold it in place, but if I move it, I'll have this as a guide. So these are useful little things on these templates to use. And I'm just going to start here. Now, I'm not going to draw all of this on camera because you get the idea. These 3 copy mug mats are all done in the same way, but if you keep watching, I am going to show you a little different kind of a template and a little different style of doing the Sashiko and everything on that. So that will be a little bit later on in the video. Right, let's lift it up and have a look. There's one little missing one there. But yeah, that looks pretty good. Now my pieces are ready for the Sashiko to be put on, so we'll do that. I'm going to use white Sashiko thread. I just really like the white on navy blue. It always looks good. I'll just thread my needle, and I'm going to begin this with a knot because the back won't show, it'll be hidden by the backing that we're going to put on. It's fine for this though, so I'm going to just begin my Sashiko stitching. If you've not actually done Sashiko before, I do have another video that shows you the basic stitch, but really it's a running stitch. You're just following the lines. The difference is you're loading your stitches onto the needle. You try to load as many on as possible, but on this particular part where it's around a curve, you can't really put that many on. And an important thing that you have to do is do tension control after each little row of stitches, otherwise you'll end up with a lot of puckering on your fabric. So after I pull my thread through here, then I just go and rub my finger and thumb firmly over that area 3 times. One of the best things about Sashiko is it's really a simple and straightforward stitch to do, but it makes such pretty results. You don't have to learn a lot of different complicated stitches for this. It's just all about being careful, making your stitches nice and even, and getting a good result. It's very difficult to make it as perfect as you ever want it to be. I always find that. I think you'll find you just enjoy the stitching process. It's just soothing and relaxing, and it's very addictive. It's a great thing to do. When you get onto a straighter, longer row of stitching, here you need to try and load as many stitches onto the needle as possible. You get a smoother line or a smoother long curved shape by doing that, and that is what I'm doing here. I'm beginning Sashiko on the second one now. This one is a lot denser pattern, so there's more stitching in this one, but the method you use is going to be exactly the same. This one's going to take a little bit longer than the first one did. You may have to carry your thread a little bit, as I'm showing there, just from one section to another. That's actually a very short carry, but even so, every time you carry thread at the back, leave it a little bit loose. It's another way to avoid the puckering that can be a problem. Around these small circles, you really have to do some smaller stitches. The large stitches just don't fit in that round circular shape. It will not look a good shape if you don't reduce your stitch size. You'll see that as you go along, and a little practice will solve it. And you know, if you make your stitches too big at first and don't realise, it's just so easy to just take those few stitches out and do it again, and it'll be fine. There's not anything else that I need to highlight about this pattern, so I'm going to go ahead and finish this. I'll come back and show you when I've completed it. I've been working on this bird and I've come to the point where the eye is, and so I just thought I would show you that for the eye I'm actually just going to do kind of a French knot. I'm coming up to the front of the fabric, wrap it around, pull the needle through, and then put the needle through back almost in the same spot, just to hold the edges of the knot in place. And can you see the little knot there makes the eye? Now I'll just continue down the neck and finish in the bird. Sashiko's finished on these 3 coffee mug mats now. So we need to move on to the next step. Getting ready to do the construction of the coffee mug mats here. For the back, I've cut 6-inch squares. For the batting, I've cut 5.5-inch squares. That'll make a less bulky turning when I finish doing the seam around the edge. I've layered this one so the backing's on the bottom, and then the Sashiko, and those 2 pieces are right sides together, and the edges are matched perfectly around the outside. Then the batting sits on the top and it's centralised, so you can see there's an even amount of about 1/4 inch all the way around. And I'm going to sew all the way around here, leaving a small opening for turning it through when the sewing is done. I'm just putting a pin in to mark where I'm going to make the opening. It's going to be about that big. That's probably about 3 inches. You can just use your judgment. Do you see this fabric? Fabric has like a design in it that looks like Sashiko stitching. I've used that quite a lot. This is just some leftover I have. Now I'm just going to sew around the outside now. I'm beginning at that pin that I marked. And stopping right here for the opening. I just cut that off. Now trim the corners and just be careful not to cut through that corner stitch. Your stitching should have just caught the batting in enough places to secure it in place for you to turn it through, and the whole thing will be secured when it's sewn on the outside. If you feel like it's very loose, you could just put a couple of odd tacking stitches in there just to hold it while you turn it, and then turn it through to the right side. I actually put my thumb into the corner and grasp my thumb and finger together and turn it through and push the corner out. Because the thumb's hidden, I really can't show you that very well on video, but it does get more of the corner out. And just make sure your batting is all laying smoothly inside. Put your fingers through the opening and just flatten it out if you need to. And of course, I'm doing this on all 3 of my coffee mats. I'm going to use this little pointer to poke in the corners and make sure they look really nice and square. And when you've got that done, just take it to the iron and press it nice and flat. Keep watching and I'll show you how to close the opening and finish off. But first, I'm going to make a slightly larger coffee mat, and I'll show you just a little bit of a different way of doing it that you might like to try. I'm going to make a slightly larger stand because it's intended for the teapot to sit on. So I've cut this square 7.5 inches. And for this one, I'm using this larger template that I bought from Shibori Dragon. This is a really good template for a beginner because when you mark, the stitches here are shown. So once you take the template away, you can see exactly where to place each stitch. So if you've not done Sashiko before, that's a really good idea. This particular pattern is, as I say, one of my favourites, but this is a little bit larger size than I usually like to do, larger scale. I'm going to use a heat erasable pen for this, and I'm just going to go ahead and mark it. And I really don't need to show you that. The marking is exactly the same with any other template. I've got the pattern all on, drawn on here now, and I'm going to do this one in a little bit of a different way. This is some different kind of batting that I have, and this is just a leftover piece. And so you'll see that I've joined it together, which, you know, I think I've said before, I like to use up my scraps. And so what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to lay this on here, and I will trim the edge of this off later. I'm going to just pin this in place and then do some Sashiko. So I've just brought this over here where there's a little bit more light. And what I'm going to show you different here is that I'm actually going to sew through the batting as well as the fabric when I do this Sashiko. And so I like to do this. It gives a little bit of a different finish, which you may have to wait and see till you try it yourself. It may not show up very well on camera, but it looks a little bit more of a cushiony kind of effect. I'm maybe not describing that very well. It's sewn in just the same way, although you may not be able to put as many stitches on because of the thickness. But generally, it's sewn the same way. And the reason that I'm using this batting and not the nice wool blend batting that I usually like to use is because when you use that, especially with navy blue fabrics, the fibres can catch on the Sashiko thread and come through to the front. And so you end up with navy blue with little tiny fibres all over it that it's really quite hard to, you know, to get rid of. And so that can be a problem. But with this synthetic kind of batting, that's a lot less of a problem. And so that's why this is a better idea for this particular project. Generally speaking, I like the other batting better. And the other thing that you could do is you could use some black batting. And yeah, you probably would still get the fibres on the front, but that isn't going to show up as much as the white. The white really is a problem. I already have enough issues with little bits of fluff and fur on my navy blue Sashiko that I do, with having dogs and cats in the house. So I don't need what goes on with the batting in addition as well, you know, adding to that mess. So let me just pull this one through. That's probably about as much in length as I want to do. So this, I think I mentioned earlier that this particular template has the stitching marked, and so for this time I'm going to actually use their stitch markings. And I do particularly like this pattern, but usually when I do this pattern it's on a smaller scale. This is actually a larger scale than I tend to like, but for this project I think it'll look fine. And I'm really not going to do any more on camera. I was just going to show you how this is starting to look, and I'll go ahead and finish it. And apart from this little difference with the batting and sewing through the batting as well, there is going to be no difference in making this. I'll do the Sashiko and then I'll cut this edge of the batting off, and I'll be putting it together in exactly the same way as the smaller sizes. So I'll come back and show you when I get to that point. So this is complete now. I've ironed all around the edges and I've folded in the opening part, and I'm just going to sew along this opening now. And I'm just going to do the usual invisible stitch that I like to use. So I've buried my thread here in the fold, and I'm going to go in opposite where the thread comes out each time. Take a little bit of fabric and then go across to the back, and always go in and out opposite the thread. The carrying of the thread is done beneath the fold. That way when you've finished it, it really won't show very much. I do divide my videos into chapters, and so if like this it's something you've seen before, just go ahead and skip to the next chapter. It's also quite hard to see this with the navy blue. Navy blue, above all the colours, I think navy blue and black make it really difficult to see your stitching. And seeing as you don't want your stitching to show in the end, that's really a good thing. Got a little thread there that I'm going to just cut off. If you're not careful, it's really easy to cut your actual sewing thread when you snip these little bits, so you kind of have to be a little bit careful. So I'm just going to sew all the way along this opening, and I'm going to do all of them the same. And then when I've done that, the next thing will be to do a top stitch all the way around the edge. And so I could actually do the top stitch in Sashiko, just do a Sashiko row around. That can be a little bit difficult on something like this because you're sewing through multiple layers. There's actually 4 layers of the fabric because there's the fold in, there's the front, the back, and the 2 folded areas. And then there's also the batting in there as well. So I'm actually going to just machine this with navy blue around the edge. It does need that though, because the batting inside may not be very well caught in the machining around the sides, so that'll just hold everything in place. And if you wanted to, you could actually do a little bit of quilting on this. You don't have to, but it would also help the batting to stay in place. I might do something very simple on something like this, just divide it into quarters and sew across, or maybe I would just leave it. I think it would look okay either way. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish this. That opening is closed now, and I think you can see it's pretty much invisible. And I've done the same with the others. And now I'm going to put this on the sewing machine and do a top stitch around the edge. I'm doing this quite close to the edge. My foot is 1/4 of an inch, and I'm using about half the width of the 1/4 of an inch. And that's a little copy mat finished. As I say, I could do some quilt rows along there, but I really think that's okay as it is. I don't think it needs anything else. If you choose to do something else, you know, that's fine. It's great that we all do, you know, do our own things. So this project is just a really simple, easy thing. And this is really one of the best things you can do if you're just starting out on Sashiko and you want something small and manageable to practice a little Sashiko, get an idea of what you know, if you like it and how you might like to do it in the future. So I would recommend making some coffee mats, get some little templates, or draw your own pattern. You know, you can draw the simplest squares or anything, or lines to Sashiko on. And I think you'll have fun with it. Here's my finished little mats. And I could have mentioned as well, you don't even need a sewing machine. You could actually have just sewn around the edges of these by hand. It's just such a small amount of sewing. So hope you enjoyed that.